for doing this. This AMP Music Summit is it's a bit of an experiment to go out and really spark conversations as the world's changing, the industry's changing rapidly. And I think, my partners and I wanted to just jump into conversations that might be inspiring or informative, but, kind of exploring how people across different sectors of the entertainment industry are trying things, learning things, and trying out ideas and kind of see what happens.
Right.
So, and you guys, I think, have a really interesting story to tell. So I appreciate you joining us and being willing to share that. I'm going to do some quick introductions and then kind of jump into it. So joining me on this virtual stage is Dennis White, Grammy-winning producer under the name Latroit, and also the creative force behind Classic Fiction and the song We're in This Together, which we're going to talk about. For anyone who follows my podcast, Rebel Radio, you probably know Dennis really well. He's been on 4 times, I think probably our most repeated guest, by popular demand, of course.
By general availability.
Absolutely. And then we have Scott Edwards, who's Executive Vice President of Creative Advertising at Fox Entertainment. Big title. I loved your LinkedIn bio. First of all, everyone watching should go to Scott's LinkedIn. It's an absolute tutorial in how to do LinkedIn right. Because
thank you.
It's both very informative and entertaining, and brings, I think, a lot of your personality out. It's not easy to do.
No, that was born of reading a lot of bios and getting a little nauseated with the Mr. Edwards this or Mr. So-and-so that. And
of course.
Let's do that differently.
Well, I mean, look, that's your job, right? Is to be creative and be entertaining and to persuade, certain types of behavior. So I think your LinkedIn is a great example of that. I love what you said, that you get to witness and I think participate in and influence the merging of art and commerce. And you're responsible for shows from 911, Last Man Standing, Masked Singer, many others, I'm sure. And we're really thankful to have you both.
Pleasure to be here.
Yep, absolutely.
So I want to talk about We're in This Together, which is the song, Dennis, that you wrote, and is kind of born out of this COVID pandemic, and is now airing across the Fox network. And I think it's a really interesting story for how that's come together, and I think there's a lot we can learn from that project. And I'm sure there's other things we should talk about as well. But maybe, Dennis, if you want to tell us kind of from the beginning, just how that song came about.
If you listen close, you can hear one heart beating, and you can find a friend in every face. We're different colors, different voices, different shapes with different choices, shining our lights through the galaxy. Even though some days are harder and the road it can get dark, you gotta be strong, wait for the sun. 'Cause if you keep on singing, keep on laughing, the whole wide world will sing along. We're in this together. We're in this together.
I wrote a song with my frequent collaborator, Charles, an artist in Australia. We have we write a lot of music together, and not to do with this moment, the sync team at my publisher Cobalt asked me to write a song having to do with the spirit of being together and overcoming obstacles, completely unrelated to this. This is a 6 or 7 month ago story. This is when songwriting is a job that you sit down and you go to work and you say, okay, here's kind of what we're going to try to say today. Yeah. And so if I'm honest, that was the core inspiration. Try to do this as a job. So we did that, and Charlie wrote just a masterful chorus and lyrics and melody over that. And we started to flush the idea out a little bit, and it took a while. It took a while to finish it. And as I was finishing the song, the trajectory between the completion of that song and world events, they kind of converged in a way that the song had taken on an entirely different meaning. Now, Scott and I have a group text thread with some mutual friends who are in the creative services industry. And this is a social thread. This is just guys who know each other, who are on similar lines of work, sharing what they did that day. Here's a funny picture. Here's a meme. Ha, ha, ha. Hey, oh, by the way, guys, I did this song today. What do you think? And Scott's instant response was, I think pivoting here, I'm working on something that this might be right for. And I think that Scott can kind of take it from there, because that's where my story goes to where Scott and I discussed it, or where he was introduced to it. And I'm sure that there were things that were leading up to that moment on his side.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a great example of when you hear a song and it just strikes that chord to the point that Dennis talked about at the beginning, whatever was the catalyst to the onset of the creation of the song. When I heard it, I was on a patio working outside. It was chilly out, there's fire in the background, and I was setting up, trying to figure out a makeshift workstation. And I listened to the song and immediately was like, hold on a second. We're about to make a 60-second PSA at Fox that is going to thank the first responders. This is right when everyone was probably thinking, let's make a PSA acknowledging the first responders across the pandemic that are risking their lives to save others. And this song just immediately in my head worked with images I could picture. And I played it for a couple of people, and almost everyone I played it for immediately got it. A couple of people are like, I need to see pictures with it. And I get that, because you can sometimes be fooled by them. But this one, I was like, this is a sure thing. And it felt right emotionally. And so my first text back to him after I listened to the song was, hey man, how much to get this exclusively? Serious. I want to know now. And he's like, yeah, well, hold on. And so I reached out to my counterpart at Fox, who's on my team, Mamie. She contacted Cobalt. We had a quick group text or chat or Zoom, most likely. It was a Zoom. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, we're working on this thing, and it's a 60-second. This song will be perfect. And so that's how that started. I gave it to some people at the office. I gave it to the head of marketing. He put it in front of the head of the studio, or head of the network, the CEO, and said, we're going to do something with this. And so they start pulling images and start pulling it together. And then we're going to have our own delays internally with clearances and legal and things like that. But as I understand it, simultaneously, the fact that we were so hot on it kind of kicked it into gear on Dennis's side, and he can pick this back up and explain what he was doing while we were busy trying to put together what the right language would be in the messaging and what the right images would be to convey these ideas.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Then, so what happened for me as the idea was evolving at Fox, the song I sent was just a demo. It wasn't done. And it needed to be finished, and it needed to be a big sounding song. And we're all in quarantine, and I needed additional vocals on it. At one point, it occurred to me that what the song really needs is a big "We Are the World" chorus at the end, which would require 25 people sounding like they're in the same room. So Scott on his side is hustling to see if he can make the project work on his end, and I'm hustling to try to finish it so that it's ready in case anybody says yes. And that was it was quite an undertaking, but it was really exciting. And it was really exciting, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and me and all the other people that were working on the song with me, because it gave all of us, this is when the shit hit the fan. And people were scared shitless, and the news was not good, and no one was in a good mood, and it was not feeling inspiring in the world at all. So to be able to have the opportunity to pour all of our energy into something positive and exciting and what we considered to be worthwhile and important into this gave all of us like a sense of purpose. I didn't have any trouble at all. I reached out to maybe 36 people around the world, and 24 people came back with voice memo recordings or whatever their version of being able to sing the chorus. And I got all of them, and it gave everybody something like a sense of purpose, which at that exact moment in time, we were all very grateful for. So the song ended up being completed sort of just in the nick of time of them deciding to go for it. And that's where we are at in the story now. Scott.
Okay, so yeah, the fascinating. And I appreciate it. I communicated that to our PR department that inside the chorus, whether you know it or not, you have a collection of people from around the country and around the world that are singing this chorus at the tail end of the song. And that's the part we use at the tail end of the 60. And to me, that was significant. Whether the world knows that or not isn't important, but that's what's inside the essence of this track, the very theme of the song. We're in this together. The actual chorus reflects that from around the planet. It's not everybody in a room. It reflects the thing we're going through right now. To your point, Dennis, about this is during a pandemic and we're all isolated, which is a very interesting way to put it through. There are two significant things I want to throw in here that are firsts for me in this process. I've worked with Dennis before. He's composed a number of things. He's composed to our request. We've used his original music. He's done all kinds of sound design for Fox. He's an amazing creative partner for us. And I shared one of these stories with Dennis. One of them is it took us a while to get this approved internally. Business Affairs had to sign off on a lot of the imagery. We had to go through all these proper channels. And that's very challenging when you're looking at editorial images of people doing their jobs. And then the second thing was this was going to go all the way to the top because this wasn't a show promotion for any of our shows. We aren't using any of our talent. We aren't going to show anybody from Fox. This is going to have a message. And at the very, very end, it will say, to all of you, thank you from Fox. And that was it. It was a unified message from the corporate company Fox that owns all the networks that you're familiar with. And so it was shown to Lachlan Murdoch, who's head of all of this. It came up in a Zoom meeting and I mentioned, we have something along those lines that my head of our network, Charlie, signed off on it, really liked it. Song does a lot of lifting there, man. These images work, but they work really well when you have this song that pulls so much emotion out of them. Mm. So I made the joke to Dennis. I said, you know, I've worked at Fox 6+ years. I've emailed Lachlan Murdoch a dozen times, maybe. We don't interface very often. We're in a meeting once a month, maybe. And I've emailed him a lot. He's a busy man. He's got a lot to do. He's never emailed me back. I don't expect him to. It's usually, hey, here's a copy of this campaign, or here's that spot, or here's this thing, or here's what we're doing. Just to update, a little informative. The one time he's emailed me back was this spot. And to me, that's significant. And that's about the emotional weight and the importance of it and the impact of it. And he wrote back, really beautiful spot. Thanks for sharing. All the best. And so I was like, well, that means this is going to go on air right away. So suddenly that machine that was taking a little bit of time to get everything approved kind of made way for whoosh, to air. And it aired on, I think, a Monday night in a 911, right? Somewhere in the middle of a 911 episode.
Cool.
That's the first thing that's a first. And then the second thing that was significant along the way is Dennis and I and some of the other guys on that thread have a weekly Zoom just to catch up socially. And this came up and I played it for them. I sent them a link in the Zoom and they watched it and I go, this is kind of where it is. This is the third rough cut. We're tweaking the order of the last images to get the most impact out of it. But you get the idea how it's going and what it's going to be like. And they really like it and it's all good. Everyone loves it. And then Dennis comes on and he says something through tear-filled eyes and a little choked up, little difficult time communicating these ideas through this intense emotion. But he communicates the idea that an artist spends a lot of their time, maybe their lifetime, looking to do something of real meaning, of real value, of real emotional importance. And that for him, this was one of those opportunities, if not the opportunity, to really put something out there that it isn't about the money, it isn't about the recognition or any of that stuff. It's about actually offering hope or healing the world or putting something out there that brings us together while we're busy being divided by the pandemic and those things. And I don't have that experience with Dennis on the Zoom calls very often. We're not on Zooms that often, and we don't cry together on Zooms very often. I'm not opposed to it. I love it. It's great. But what a powerful thing for me to witness on a Zoom call because of this song and the meaning of it for us at Fox and the people that see it and for Dennis. So we're just happy to be a significant part of it and get a chance to get out there and showcase it on air, which was was really wonderful. And I'm grateful for both those experiences. More so for Dennis. I'll get Lachlan to email me again in about 6 years. It's all good. Not worried about it.
No, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I want to touch on a couple things that both of you said. And so talk to me about the process internally. And I know, hearing some updates from Dennis along the way, it sounded like at certain points it may happen, it may not happen. There's, which I think is pretty, anyone who's made a deal of any significance, there's always moments where it could all fall apart. And so, talk to me about what that's like internally to get something like this done. And especially at a time like this, where I think that companies are concerned about appearing tone deaf, right? About striking the wrong note, so to speak, which could be in a bunch of different directions, right?
Yeah.
And so what are those conversations like internally at a company like Fox, or what'd you go through to get?
We actually present a couple different tracks when we do stuff like this. We have a backup track or a second track or a second option. Yeah. So what happens is 2 tracks went to the head of marketing. And I said, this is the one I want to use. Here's a backup one that actually was generated internally. And it wasn't one or the other based on that, where it came from. It's based on which is best for this particular project emotionally.
Yeah.
And it was clearly this one. The other one we ended up using in another 911 spot, and then it's being used on something else. So it's all good. Everything gets their chance. They're both great tracks. But this one was the right one. It had more hope and more promise and more emotional impact, or whatever. And so there was that challenge. And not everyone, when they hear the music, immediately gets this is perfect. They need to see it with imagery in order to evaluate. And so that requires the editorial process. So there's that happening concurrently in an edit bay, where a producer and an editor with masks on are working on what shots go where. And this thing went to, I think, version 14. And I'm talking about when this line from this part of the lyric hits, I don't want to be reading a card. I want to see a face of a human being in a state of struggle, or I want to see a moment of hope, or something that, like, what I call those markers or those milestones inside an edit. And the best editors I've worked with when I was editing, when they identified this is the part of the song that has this punch or this impact or this pull on your heart, this is the image that makes it as potent as possible. When they get attached to that moment, they travel together. They never get separated again. It's like Noah's Ark. They are teamed up. And some of these shots were moving around. I was like, whoa. Don't put a card there. Don't make me read something. Put a shot there. So there's that editorial nuance along the way. And they're getting tired of my notes, like, long detailed notes at this exact second, move this shot, move this around, all that stuff, because it's that important, right? I don't usually get that into it. And then there's the other side of it, which is a legal side of it, which is business affairs and legal clearances for images, which is very challenging when an image is available for editorial purposes, like for the news, that shows a hospital worker doing something, or frontline workers or paramedics or whomever, firemen, whatever, firefighters. And that image is probably cleared for editorial use, but there are chances they didn't get talent releases for every single thing they shot. So they don't have all these firefighters, or they don't have all these paramedics releases, depending on what the shot is and who shot it. So you can use the photo, but in some cases, the talent in the photo need to be reached out to or attempted to be reached out to in order to get that cleared as well. So we ended up doing a lot of shot swaps to get shots we knew came with full clearance or full usage. And that took a couple of weeks, because there's that. That was where we were like, I don't know if this is going to make it through the gauntlet of this isn't cleared or that's not cleared. Right. That was significant. And you're seeing hundreds of these spots on the air now. Could we get it through clearance faster? Could we get the editorial done and get the internal approvals faster? We would have been a little bit earlier in the process, like by a week or two. I think it took us about exactly 30 days to get it on the air. But still, 60 seconds on national primetime air is a significant slot to get inside 911, our number one drama. So it all worked out. So those were our internal challenges, editorial and clearance challenges. Those are the main things.
Okay. One thing I want to shine a light on, just really quickly here, that speaks to Scott's leadership, I think not just in this project, but just in general. At the time, and even to this day, if you look at any of the hundreds of spots that speak to this moment, to my knowledge, there are none or very few at the most spots to the thing that you brought up a second ago, Josh, about companies not wanting to appear tone deaf or not wanting to have the right voice or say the wrong thing at the wrong time, or say the right thing but in the wrong way. So virtually all of them have erred on the side of saying nothing, meaning it's moody piano chords and there are no lyrics. There are no words that are being attached to that. And that's a much easier decision to make. It's much safer. But Scott really, and this is why he's the senior level creative that he is, because he has an idea, and I've seen him for 20 years have an idea and just stick with it because that's the idea. And he's been proven right enough times that he has the position that he has now. And it was Scott that said, no, these are the lyrics for this piece. This is what we're saying. Mm-hmm. I'm comfortable with that. And there were, had this not been going through Scott, there is no chance. I think it would have been very unlikely that anybody would have had the confidence or even ability to say, like, here's the way we're saying this. I mean, it takes somebody with that elite vision and confidence to be able to guide that through. And that's particularly noteworthy. It's easy to miss, which is why I wanted to bring it up.
So what does that teach you? I mean, obviously you guys have a existing relationship, and I want to talk about that because I think that's important. But I wonder, Dennis, what does that teach you about this process, about pitching? How do you go into the next project differently maybe than you have in the past because of what you've learned here?
I don't. The net of the lesson here is just sort of a reaffirmation of my experience having done this for almost 20 years, is that if you have an idea that you believe in, have the confidence to stand up for it, stick up for it, stick with it. It might not be, Scott's come to me. There was one time Scott came to me for music for a thing and I didn't win it. It just didn't quite get it. Didn't quite get there. So I lost that one, but I still have this piece of music and I knew it was good. I was just doing it wrong. So like maybe a coach that sees something in an athlete that's like the swing's wrong, just spend a little time with the swing and I can see you'll get there. And I kind of take that approach to this. And, the short version of this is that a year or two later, Fox, I didn't pitch it to Fox. Fox just kind of knew it was around. And they came back and said, hey, that thing, can we use that for Major League Baseball? Because the newer version had been, it was Cobalt. The newer version had been submitted to Cobalt, and then Cobalt did pitch it to Mamie, unrelated to the knowledge that it had been pitched there before the year or two prior and didn't win. But I took that information. A lot of places, Josh, will take that as a no to the song. They don't approach it as a no to that moment or no to that project. They take it, well, this song's not working, and they move on, and that song dies forever. And that's not the approach that we take here. And so it's kind of an affirmation for that, because, I will tell you, we wrote that song 5-6 months ago, submitted the idea for a completely unrelated thing. And they're like, I don't know. But I was like, no, this is a special song. So I'm going to stick with this and turn this into something. I am going to do that. So it's kind of, does that make sense? It's just sort of an affirmation of our approach here.
I mean, I think that's a big insight. I think that, we have a tendency as creators to move on from an idea, maybe that's not successful right out of the gate, and kind of to the next thing. Right. And I don't think that's often the right answer. I think, there's lots of work in our catalogs, so to speak, that has legs and sometimes needs to be revisited. And
easily 90% of our income here is generated by songs or recordings that did not win the first time, or that by commercial standards were abject failures.
Amazing. Right.
90% of our income is generated by songs that didn't work.
Yeah.
That's significant. That's a reminder that it's not the arrow that's bad. It's just the target you're aiming it at. the target changes and say, oh, wait a second, this was never meant for that anyhow. But boy, it's a win right here because it's on point or whatever. And I think to your point, both of you mentioned being tone deaf or slightly tonally off. Budweiser's got an amazing ad that they ran early on that said, this Bud's for the Yankees, this Bud's for the, right? And my criticism of that, and it was sent to me as a reference, all those get sent to me like, heads up, this is happening. We're in this marketplace and this is now the competition. I was like, well, we're not competing with them. But if I were to give Budweiser a note or that agency a note, I would say, hey guys, what I loved about ours and what I haven't liked about a lot of the other ones, Dunkin' Donuts, for example, is showing the first responders drinking and eating Dunkin' Donuts products. That's fine. Then it becomes a sales piece for your product. And we weren't trying to sell Fox. We genuinely wanted to say for 60 seconds, which is an eternity in primetime broadcast, apparently. Thank you from us to you for what you're doing. You're giving us hope. And that was it. It was originally 9 cards. I got it down to 5 to distill that message. But the Budweiser one, this Bud's for, this Bud's for, this Bud's for. And at the end, you see the Budweiser logo. And I had said to Laura Caracoli, who runs our brand partnerships, for me, that spot would work better if the voiceover said, here's to the Yankees, here's to the Red Sox, here's to the whatever team, the Trailblazers, here's to, and just acknowledge them. It really, truly becomes about the teams / workers they're talking about. And at the end, the card says Budweiser's donating all their advertising toward this relief. I'm like, hell yeah. Right. I mean, I don't drink beer, but if I did, I'd start drinking Budweiser based on that alone. But it's this Bud's for, this Bud's for, this Bud's for. You couldn't not make it about you, could you? That kind of.
I mean, I love that. And, obviously if you work in marketing at Budweiser, your whole career is founded on this Bud's for whatever, right? And
absolutely. It's their phrase.
Yeah. I mean, they spend billions of dollars and lots of mental energy trying to fit that phrase into, every area of life. And I think you bring up a great point, which is sometimes you have to break out of that.
Yep.
And sometimes you have to, you win by putting yourself second.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really hard. It's really hard for marketers. It's hard for business owners.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure Budweiser liked the fact that it said Bud repeatedly throughout this.
Of course. Absolutely.
And look, as a guy, it matters less now, but when things started to really dramatically change and it was evident that this shit is on, at being a publisher, from a publisher's perspective, having a song like We're in This Together that speaks to this moment, there are discussions of like, okay, is this a financial tool now because this might be the right thing that we're going to make a pile of money off of because it says the right thing at the right time? Is it that, or is it a song to connect with people? And there was quite a bit of discussion about that internally while we were being approached by Fox, which everything about that license and business experience was absolutely perfect, and I'm grateful for it. But it wasn't a financially motivated decision by anybody, right? No. And the smart advice that I had gotten from smart people that I know and trust, and I felt the same way too, was that for musically, the moment that you let commerce interrupt a song being able to find its own path, you're fucked. The song's going to die. The whole thing is going to die. You got to let the song find its own path to connection with people, which is the whole function of a song and a message. The second you get money involved in that, you fucked up the whole thing and you're done. And this is a great case study in that, because the decision was made early on. Give it away. Just give it away for next to nothing. Just let the song speak to people. Let it do what it's supposed to do. And hard cut to, 15 million people saw that the first week that it was on. Yeah. An honor as a writer, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I want to throw that over to the guy who has art and commerce in his job description, and who's measured, I'm sure, by the success of these creative efforts to drive revenue, right?
Usually.
Yeah. And so how does it look what does it look like for this project to be successful? How's that being measured or even thought about?
Well, the two biggest internal measures would be head of marketing, who is in charge of what spots go where and what our airtime is used for and what it's not used for.
Yeah.
Head of marketing oversees the media team. And when they allocate a 60 and then a 45 verse cut down, 45-second cut down of it plays in Masked Singer, or maybe the 60 that I don't recall. And then After the Mask, which is our third biggest launch of the year, in the middle of the pandemic, they pulled this show off. It was amazing. That team is amazing, Rob's team. Sure. And so there's that internal, like, oh my gosh, rah, everyone's enthusiastic about it because they believe in it, because they feel the same thing we feel. So that's good. Then it's mirrored by the CEO and Charlie, and then Lachlan Murdoch, who's head of all of it, saying, this is great, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have this affiliate measure, which is very important to understand. The affiliates that represent Fox and have our signal around the country, 22 hours of the 24-hour day, right? Besides the 2 hours of prime time, it's all theirs.
Yeah.
And our affiliate reps internally said, can I get a 60, a 45, and a 30? And in those, can you put 8 seconds of black and then 4 seconds of black in the shorter one, so that my local affiliate partners can take that spot and put in shots of their local talent or local first responders, local people in their market doing what we're talking about, helping to offer hope or save lives or risking themselves. So they're enthusiastic. So it gets sent around the country to the local affiliates, and they have the full version where we've cut it, and then they have the version that says, be a partner with us and put in shots that mean something to you in your local market. And you see a worker in front of a Cleveland clinic, or you see a worker in front of something in Pittsburgh or whatever, that lets you know this is local and this is connected to the people in this actual community where this is playing. So there was big buy-in on that, which was really significant. And so those are really the measures of success for something like that, because it's not designed to drive viewership. It's not designed to drive awareness of Fox or Fox's brand. It really, to be totally honest, it's kind of off-brand for Fox to take a super sincere, heartfelt, 60-second song and message to say, hey, thank you, which is why it's such a deviation from our usual tone, which is kind of snarky or playful or edgy or whatever terms you think to identify Fox. Yeah. That exists. We have a 30-second PSA about this that uses a snappy voiceover and says, I know it sucks to be at home, but do what you can. And remember, you'll get back to pool party, you'll get back to whatever, dinners with family, and it uses animation footage to support these ideas. Yeah. And then it's got a wise crack at the end from whatever show, and then it goes to our logo. That's about the shows and the brand and not selling, but keeping us out there. Yeah. This one wasn't. This was really, truly, to Dennis's point, a real pure endeavor, which is great. Those are very, very rare because it is commerce for the most part, right? Marketing and commerce. Another thing about the licensing fees, I, to this day, have no idea what we spent on that track. I've never asked. I trust Mamie. I trust the budget that she runs inside the creative advertising department that I oversee. And she's like, no problem, we got this. She didn't even bat an eye or come to me and say, they're asking for a lot, or it's not going to run much, so we have to spend this much money. There's not a discussion whatsoever about the rate or the duration. We just said, let's clear it for a month or two, just in case the affiliates want to keep using it or we want to keep using it. And that's what they did. And I, to this day, don't know how much it was, and I don't care to know. It's not important.
I don't either, to be perfectly honest. I don't.
I love it.
It's something.
That's rare that neither of us would know.
Yeah. Cobalt and Fox music department have a great long-standing relationship. And I know the Fox music department. I've worked with them personally, Mamie and the team. And the team over at Cobalt, Kat, Jeanette, Chris Lakey, the rest of them, they all know each other. They all like each other. It's fine. Something worked out. I don't know what it is. It's my budget forecast. It's, everybody knows each other, and
all good.
The guy who controls the thing, me, and the guy who wanted it on TV, Scott, both said, whatever, just make it happen. Just whatever you do is
make it happen.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love that. And just to touch on something you said, I think one measure of the mark of a great brand is the ability to go off brand and still have it work. And so that's so cool. And so, I want to talk a little bit about the relationship piece, because as you said, you guys are friends. You've worked together before this. There's a relationship between Fox and Cobalt. Not everyone has a friend who's the executive vice president at a major TV network, right? So, but as I was thinking about this, I feel like, folks watching, you may not know Scott Edwards, but you know somebody. And now's the time, I think, for all of us to really be investing in and continuing to work through those relationships, whoever they are, and finding opportunities, creating opportunities together. I think it's always the time for that, but maybe especially now. And so, I wonder how you guys think about that. And, it's hard to say what if, but, this song coming in off the street, I imagine, has probably a hard time even finding you.
Yeah, from our side, we get a lot. I get emails all the time from libraries or label representation or artists, agents and reps.
Yeah.
I just forward most of them to Mamie and say, I assumed you received this. If you didn't, there are a few libraries that I worked with when I was an editor and a producer that I know them well, and it's really high quality stuff. So when their email comes in saying, we got these new tracks or this new collection of things for trailers or TV spots, I'll give a lot of it a listen if I have the time to do so, have it on the background or whatever. It doesn't hurt when you're friends with someone who's talented. I have to say, I have a lot of friends that, over the years through editing and producing, who wanted to be voiceover artists or wanted to be musicians or tried their hand at all that. And they're not getting, and we're as good of friends on occasion, but their work's not going to be used in a Fox PSA or Fox promo or trailer or whatever, because the level of artistic quality that they put forth isn't anywhere near what we're talking about here with Dennis. And that's significant. I'm not saying you should only be friends with people that are talented, but if you're going to work with your friends, they should be damn talented. Otherwise, it's going to hurt your career anyhow to put your shitty composer friends' music out there and say, this is great. And if you don't believe that anyhow, why would you say it?
Right.
A good example of that is a friend of my wife's, Canadian composer, asked Sam, my wife Samantha, hey, would Scott listen to some of my stuff? I'd love to get it in front of him. And so they sent it to me. I sent it to Mamie. I did not tell her who this was, that I knew them. I just said, will you please give me feedback on these 3 tracks? That's it.
Yeah.
And she gave me very, very critical feedback. I mean, this is missing, this is missing, this is a struggle, that doesn't sound great, there's not enough of a build, whatever the critical notes were, because I asked her to provide them. She and her team sat down and went through it. I sent them back and I said to the person, this is what the real feedback is to those 3 tracks. Yeah. And this is what you need to know. This is what the head of music at Fox thinks of these. It's not to criticize you or to make you feel bad. It's so the ballpark you're trying to get into to play ball is a significantly competitive world, and it's top tier. And I thought that might be the last of it. I wasn't trying to knock him down. I was trying to give him real feedback. He came back several months later with some new tracks and said, hey, will you give these a listen? And I forwarded those, and they're like, hey, these are pretty good. And I go, yeah, I think he heard you. I think he took your honest, critical feedback to heart in a very constructive way, and it's really stepped up his game. Mamie liked the pieces. She, I think, shared them with people at FX and sports at the time. I don't know what did or did not get licensed, but I think that's really significant. With Dennis, trust is such a big part of the foundation of our relationship. I know that if we go to him and say, we've got this project, it requires this type of a tone, this type of a build, this type of a vibe, this type of a whatever, the something for Gotham, drama, comedy, thriller, whatever we have on the air, I know he's going to come back with something that's a viable option to elevate what we're trying to do. Whatever we started with, either we're not going to clear, we're just looking for original track to begin with. It's going to help this. Music is always the big defining difference between the things that are good and the things that are great. So many times people talk about something that's amazing, and I'm like, what was the song that they used? And they say, and I was like, oh yeah, of course you think it's amazing, because the track is so powerful, it lifts everything up. And that's what we get with Dennis. So to me, it's easier when your friends are really talented, which is the only reason I'm friends with Dennis, is because he's really talented.
Well, that's kind of you saying, I appreciate it. But so I suppose, Scott's building this entire project internally, and the song's not done. So, Scott, I should say thanks for trusting the fact that I would get it there, because Josh, the song wasn't done, and he's got all these people internally selling the cuts and the thing and building up. We got there. We did get there eventually.
So maybe talk about that a little bit. You mentioned, the world's falling apart, everything you see in the media and all that, thanks to Fox.
That's a separate Fox, by the way. It's a different Fox. I do not work for that Fox.
Just kidding. But you, both you, but Dennis, you talked about, having this opportunity to really throw yourself into your work, find this thing to focus on, which, as I heard you going through it, was giving you energy. Talk about maybe that process and some of what you got maybe from some of the other people involved. Because I think, our ability to focus and really drive forward during tough times is sometimes defining to our careers and lives. And so what's that been like for you?
I'll tell you in a second. Now, you've done enough podcasts with me to know that when you ask a question, as many times as not, I'll just have a different question or a different lane that I want to get to real quick. But while I'm sort of thinking about the stuff that you're okay. So the joke that you made about Fox made me think of this thing. And this is a real thing that is just data that I just want to share with people. So, and all three of you are in this story. The original quote that came for the uses of the song was for the PSA on Fox Broadcasting, right? That's what you're calling the TV stuff, right, Scotty? Fox Broadcasting.
Fox Entertainment is the entertainment arm, broadcasting, exactly.
Okay, Fox Entertainment. And that is a me and Scott thing. Cool. Now, after Mr. Murdoch heard it and liked it and wanted to use it in maybe more broader sense, unifying Fox and things like that, he came back specifically because Fox is, if I understand correctly, several networks that don't really interact with each other that much under one big parent company. So it's Fox Sports, Fox Entertainment, Fox something else, and Fox News. Now, fair and balanced. It's important to do fair and balanced here. But I think it would be fair to say that Fox News is known to be, it can on occasion be a politically polarizing network or broadcast outlet. And in the sync and clearance world, usually approvals with companies with a relationship that you trust their sensibility, like me with Cobalt, just approve it. You know what you're doing. Fine. Except for alcohol, political stuff, tobacco, adult stuff like that. That's a little bit touchy. And so Fox News has a very political leaning thing. And so there was a moment that I noticed that. Now, that song was going to clear because this is a me and Scott Edwards story. And if you've ever read Jerry Weintraub's book, Jerry Weintraub, a lifelong Democrat, one of his best friends was George Bush the Elder, the good one, the Elder Bush. They were best friends. And he has an entire chapter of how you just don't let politics get in the way of a close friendship or stuff like this. It's really a book worth reading. And Josh and I had just previous to this, a couple of weeks previous, had done a podcast, and the subject was on selling out. The concept of selling out, what does it mean as an artist to sell out? Is that even a thing anymore? And we kind of arrived at the fact that the thinking has moved on. You can be a punk band and be in a beer commercial, and you're not a sellout, and it's just kind of the way we're doing it now. The thinking has evolved. But I don't get my information from Fox myself. And the thought occurred to me. So I had a follow-up conversation with Josh. I said, well, funnily enough, I mean, this is the first time as a writer or somebody who cleared something where I'm acknowledging the fact that I'm not necessarily aligned with one of the brands or outlets that's going to be using the song. And I'm just noticing it. And Josh said something so quickly. I don't know if you remember this, Josh, but just quickly. And he said, well, that's bullshit. And I would have expected Josh to say like, yeah, but no, Josh instantly that's bullshit. So wait, what? We don't agree on anything. And he said, well, do you write songs only for liberals? Yeah. No. I want my mom to like my songs too. Instantly, that just shut that down and brought it back to, Josh, it brought it back to the song connecting with people. Don't let the thing in the middle get in the way of that, even though it might not necessarily be your thing. If you have a song that you believe in, it's going to be useful to a positive message. Don't let anything get in the way. Is that what you were asking, Josh?
Not really, but I'm glad you bring it up, right? Like, I think, again, for anyone watching, my perspective is that the creator's job is to create. Yep. You get out whatever's inside of you and you share it with the world. And then what we all do with it is up to us. It's none of your damn business, frankly.
Yeah.
If we work out to baby making music, that's on us. And if conservatives like a song made by a liberal, like, who cares?
Yeah.
But you put out in the world what you want to put out.
For that 60 seconds, because it aired on, I forgot to mention, it aired on News, Sports, and Fox Business, which is the fourth network, right? Entertainment, News, Sports, and Business. It was provided to all of those as well. And it inspired Lachlan asking for a spot that has all the talent from all of our networks coming together to deliver a message to the first responders to say thank you. And we're in the middle of making that as well. But for that 60 seconds on Fox News, they're not a conservative broadcast news network. They're not a liberal network. They're a network with a positive message of hope and gratitude toward the people that are risking their lives, at least for that 60 seconds. And to your point, Dennis, you're reaching those viewers with that message. And so for a moment, maybe we're all one, thematically to the song itself, instead of the divisiveness that sometimes comes with Fox News versus CNN and other news outlets.
And that's the more important thing. And further on to that, if there's one audience that I want to say we're in this together to, it's an audience that might not share my immediate political views, that we don't immediately have the same thing going on. If there's one audience I want to speak to, it's those people.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I want to talk about, we're closing up our time together. And I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I'd love to know some thoughts on kind of what are you guys working on next? What's keeping you creatively engaged? The most valuable quote I've heard was about a month ago, which seems like years ago. Was that if you still think you're in the same business you were in 2 months ago, you've lost.
Yeah.
And so I wonder how are you guys taking that, and what's on the horizon?
Well, I'm selling my house. I'm not selling my house. I'm just kidding. Scott, go ahead.
Well, I'm on the RTW committee, which met yesterday for the first time. It's the Return to Work Committee.
Yeah.
And it's a team of 12 maybe, and it's about how do we get back into the office. When do we get back in the office, and what's it look like when we are back in the office in whatever stages? What do each of those stages look like? And so there's the proximity and the practicality or logistics of being in the same physical space, because creative is at least in the world of creative advertising, it's a very connected, hands-on, in the same space type of process. There's a lot of moments that are significant in that process that happen in person. So trying to figure out how do we slowly get people back safely in person, and to what degree. So while that discussion is happening, to your point, Josh, about we're in a different business, the content we're making is very different. We're doing a lot of stuff that's being shot at home. The subject matter is different. We're talking about hopeful concerts or graduation broadcasts. You're going to see that in the near future. You're going to read an announcement. They're going to do across all 4 networks. They're going to do some sort of graduation event to honor those people that would be graduated in person this May from high schools. So that's interesting. But then how will our content change going forward in the fall and after that, based on what people are thinking about and wrestling with and writing as their dramas and their comedies right now? Like the writers that are busy working, what are they wrestling with? What ideas are they wrestling with? How does that manifest itself into a series for streaming or for broadcast or for cable or for whatever? And that's hard to predict. There are also, so there's that variable to your point. There's also the things that hold broadcast together in significant ways. And that would be sports broadcasting, which is a very significant live viewing type thing, whether it's baseball or football being the biggest one. That's something they really want to see come back in a way for ratings and for platform to advertise promote your new content, but also as a signifier of society having some sort of return, not entirely to normal, but to the new normal where we can gather in smaller groups or celebrate a public sports event or have a meeting in a room with more than 10 people. So we're looking at this from all these different angles, and there's a projected series of economic curves that are mostly swooshes, whether they have some ups and downs on the way, but in theory, we get back up there. We're just wrestling with how do we program for that? How do we advertise to people, to promote to people, to still connect with them, to have them want to enjoy our content in a meaningful way? We don't want to just make stuff to make stuff. We want to make stuff that connects with our audiences. So there are so many variables in play in that process that where I think flying blind to some degree, because we don't fully know what those stages involve and what they are. So we're going to feel our way through it.
Yeah, that's great.
I don't have the particulars worked out, but I do have the experience and observation that in times like this where shit just gets turned upside down, there lie real opportunities that now you're compelled to find. And that's when there's more opportunity. It would have seemed the outward facing feeling about being involved in the banking industry after the 2008 housing collapse was that was a bad time to be in banking. That's the way it felt forward facing. It was, as history showed, it was the best time to be in banking. It was the best time to get into banking. When dance music died, for anybody who remembers, the market for dance music in 2003 just crashed, whittled down to nothing by like 90%. So what do you do when you're Patrick Moxey and you have what feels like an irrelevant dance music brand that nobody cares about? He doubled down on Ultra Records so that when that shit finally came back, they were the market leader. People that accepted early on, which I was not one of, people that accepted early on that download revenue from iTunes was not going to be the way forward and we're moving to online streaming, who got to YouTube first and Spotify first, who built their playlists, built their channels, they were in winning positions later on. So I haven't quite worked out the exact specifics, but it's a mindset to start with and to just kind of keep your mind open to the possibilities ahead of you.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. You know, you've heard me say it before. One of my favorite adages is that, you know, businesses and careers are built by keeping your foot on the gas.
Yeah.
And all this shit gets thrown at us to distract us from that. And that's how it happens. If you're Patrick Moxey, if you're Rupert Murdoch, you keep your foot on the gas and that's all there is.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And it's easy to be distracted or discouraged from doing that.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So my last question for both of you, you know, to your point, Scott, we get back to this sort of new normal, whatever and whenever that is. How do you think you guys are changed personally and professionally and creatively from having gone through this experience of the pandemic?
Ooh. Dennis, you want to go? I can take it. I got a quick thought. I read a really interesting article this morning about the introspection that comes with isolation. And when people take that time to look at what they value and what has meaning for them, whether it's professional or personal or a combination of both, I think taking that awareness back to the workspace and however the nuanced approach has shifted in the way we create and craft our marketing materials for the content that we're sharing with the world, the process that the way people interact behind the scenes in the process of creating those trailers and promos and online campaigns and social videos and print elements, that creative process is significant, I think, in how we, I'm going to have a little interruption here.
That's all right.
A young boy who's having a tough time back there.
That is the new normal.
Yeah, daddy's got to go back to work on the daddy side for a second.
Totally.
But I think we'll figure out what that is, what's of value to us, what we missed, what we loved and valued, and show that appreciation in the way we interact with each other as we collaborate and create what we create.
Great. Well, Dennis, any thoughts on that?
A lot of the same ones. I mean, it's astounding to me how much waste was in my life prior to this. Now decisions are way more important. I don't have the luxury of options to fuck around and what I got to do. We're all in hunker down and make it work mode. And I'm astounded by the frivolous way that I was spending, my creative time, my actual time. I've learned that I like cooking at home way more than I thought I did. And I learned also that I don't hate doing dishes nearly as much as I thought I did. It gives me something to do at the end of the day. And, it's a terrible situation to see so much suffering and so much disruption. It's never easy, but there are going to be so many net positives out of this that while it's important to be compassionate to those around you that are not maybe having as easy a time of it